I need to clean my desk and my bookshelf and probably a lot of other things that I don't know about yet. I was supposed to make this video last week, but I got my second dose of the vaccine and I had to sleep for a long time. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite books of 2020 and also 2019 because I was planning to film the 2019 video at the start of 2020, but then some stuff started happening. So here we are. I know that it is May of 2021, but I don't care. When I say favorite books, I mean books that I personally read that year as opposed to books that came out that year. I go by my own publishing calendar. Thank you so much. It is so funny looking at the difference between how many books I read in 2019 versus 2020. Like in 2019, I read a total of 74 books. I was like, ooh, awesome. That was more than I read last year. I'm gonna keep it going, keep it going. And then in 2020, I read 41 books because I had very lethal brain. My favorite fiction for 2019, I'm plumping them all together because they're a series, is the His Dark Materials books by Philip Pullman. So that's The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. I didn't read, they are young adult fiction, but I didn't read them as a kid. I really wanted to, but then I remember so distinctly I was like at summer camp one day and I started to read The Golden Compass, and on like page 6 the main character says she was like slapped by a servant, and I closed the book because it was too much for me. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't read them as a kid because I think they would have ruined my life, but I'm really glad that I read them as a grown-up. They're the favorite books of one of my best friends, so it was really nice reading the books now, and then I got to talk to him about it and like relive all of his favorite parts. I love picking up fantasy books and being like, wow, have you guys heard about this? It's so good, after it has already sold millions of copies. His Dark Materials is about a world where your soul exists outside of you and it's a little sweet animal, or sometimes a very scary animal, friend, and it follows the misadventures of a young girl named Lyra, or possibly Lyra, as she tries to stop the universe from being destroyed by evil, mysterious forces. It's really, really good. I cried at the ending. It's so beautifully written. The politics in it are really interesting. It's been banned in some parts of the US because it's also kind of an extended metaphor about atheism. I thought it was really interesting. The writing is of such a high caliber. Philip Pullman is a very poetic writer, and I really appreciate just how much care he puts into, you know, not only building the world and creating a really exciting plot, but also just words on the page. Gorgeous. I finished the books 10 years ago in 2019 in time to watch the HBO show, which I didn't love. I was very confused by it. Like, I love the casting. Clearly they spent $1 billion of their Game of Thrones money on the set design. Like, it looked gorgeous. It was filmed gorgeously. But I think they were really confused about the audience of the show. This has been my conclusion. Wildly popular young adult books, right? But HBO is a network for adults. Like, you would have fun magical scenes with the kids on misadventures, and then suddenly like it's a political drama with the adults. I'm trying not to give away spoilers for the 10 people who also haven't read it yet, but the show gives a lot more narrative weight to the adult characters than the kids. Like, there's a couple really key plot points that the kids experience in the books that then the adults do in the show. And to some extent, I understand it because there's so many child labor laws in the entertainment industry. Like, kids can only be on set for certain hours of day, you know, like there's all this like on-set schooling and stuff that like building a prestige hour-long drama around 2 child main characters can be very, you know, difficult. But the writing was just not quite there for me. I didn't even feel compelled to watch the second season. I don't know, tell me if you read the books and also watched the show. I am hungry for discussion. My favorite poetry for 2019 was The 29th Year by Hala Alian. She is a poet and a novelist and also a clinical psychologist. Incredible. It can be hard to summarize poetry collections sometimes the way that you would a novel, but these poems are so full of action. They're so vibrant even as they contemplate destruction. Most of the time there's so many journeys in this book, geographically, journeys through sobriety, journeys through relationships. the writing is just like crackling. My friend Isabella Price's book Hours Inside Out reminded me a bit of this when I read her manuscript for the first time, because Isabella's whole thing as she was putting the poems together was that she didn't want to write about a feeling or an experience. She wanted the poem to just be completely within that. She didn't want to constantly have to explain herself or justify why she was writing about a certain topic or a certain experience. She was just in it, and if you got it, you got it. And these poems aren't about chaos, they're within chaos. You're seeing exactly what the speaker is seeing and what the speaker wants you to see, and it's brilliant. I've only read Hala Alian's poetry before, but I just started Salt Houses, which is one of her novels. It is really great so far. It just big sweeping family history, reminds me of 100 Years of Solitude and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which are some of my favorite books, so I'm really excited to finish it. My favorite nonfiction for 2019 was Too Much and Not the Mood by Durga Chubose. It is a collection of essays on aesthetic pleasure, and she is the current editor of Essence, the fashion magazine where it's like Sense but with 2 S's at the front. I'm very sophisticated, as you can tell. This book is so good. I think you could teach an incredible cultural criticism course just on all of the movies and books and paintings that she references throughout. She is so skilled at writing, like just at the level of the sentence. These are very nice sentences, in my opinion. The first essay is like 80 pages long, and it's basically a run-on sentence, which is like one of my favorite prose forms. She's great at capturing really tiny details and really specific experiences. You know how biased I am and how obvious my compliments are, but to me, she writes like a poet. She writes like she wrote poetry for a really long time before she started writing essays, and that's top praise for me. Moving into 2020 now. My favorite novel that I read in 2020 was one that I read for the first time in 2019, and I also read again a few weeks ago. It's become one of my favorite novels. It is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin, who also started as a poet before she started writing science fiction. I kind of don't want to say what this book is about, and I want you to just go into it and see what happens, but basically it is about a man who realizes that his dreams are shifting reality and what happens because of it. And it is so smart. It is so good. It's under 200 pages, but every single phrase pushes the plot forward, characterizes the main characters deeply. There's only really like 3 characters in this, but the world that they're in feels so densely populated and so alive. It was written when Ursula K. Le Guin was like really getting into her anarchist readings. Each time I read it, I bring a different focus. Like the first time I was just, oh my gosh, what's happening? This is incredible. Like she expects you to keep up. And then the second time I read it for the love story. The third time I was just noticing like how well she sculpts the personalities of the main characters and like their arcs throughout. It's really fantastic. You'll have a wonderful afternoon on a hammock just reading this. Quick break to charge my camera. I hope it doesn't die on me again before I finish filming this. My favorite poetry collection that I read last year was A Cruelty Special to Our Species by Emily Jungmin Yoon. You can see the details of embroidery stitching on the cover. It's so beautiful. This book is about the Korean women that the Japanese military trafficked in their occupied territories during World War II, and also about violence against women, violence against Asian women at large. I recommend looking up videos of her talking about this book. She's so good in interviews, and it is so clear that she did so much research as she was writing this book and thought about these poems for so long before she even started writing them. And as she was writing and editing, she does such a skillful and compassionate job of writing about experiences in the historical record, about pain that she did not personally go through but still feels connected to. At the level of craft, I really want to point out her prose poems in this book. So a prose poem is a paragraph basically that looks like it's something out of a normal essay, but it's still a poem, it's still a poetic form. And the line breaks you don't have as much, you know, control over as you would in a free verse poem where you can break the line wherever you want, because the page breaks the line, right? But she still uses each line break where the line would naturally break, you know, within the paragraph, to propel the poem forward to create surprise and shock within the line, to create alternate meanings in how she breaks a phrase up. Like, she never ends it on a boring word. She doesn't just split it in the middle of a sentence for no reason. It's always pushing the poem forward. As intense and horrifying as the material of this book is, she also includes these moments of just like stark beauty, or also really dark, clarifying humor, to balance out the collection overall. It's really well put together from start to finish. Finally, my favorite nonfiction of 2020, I have another book by a poet who is working in a different genre. This is the Book of Delights by Ross Gay. He also wrote Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, which I think you should get as a present for everybody in your life. So one year he gave himself a prompt on his birthday to write a short essay every day on something that brings him delight. And what he gifts us is this book of about 100 short essays, and he is so sincere throughout the book that it makes me cry. Like, this is a book that I read a lot last year when I was feeling just especially cynical and closed off and numb, because after reading 3 in a row, I would just start to weep, like literally weep over a grasshopper that he describes. I'd really recommend just reading these essays aloud to yourself or to a friend, because they also sound so good when they're read aloud, and I think that's some of the poetry training coming through. There's so much attention to sound and also detail throughout the book. It's so full of sweet things, and he also talks about happiness and pleasure and finding the good things in life in a way that he also assumes you're intelligent. You know, it's not one of those books where it's like, well, have you considered just being happy? You know, have you tried just like doing a gratitude journal? He's so grounded in the world throughout this book, and the world emerges in the writing. So these were some of the books that I really liked the last few years. In conclusion, I love books and crying, and today's fact is that you can still pre-order my next book, Grocery List Poems, which comes out June 21st, which is like so soon, my goodness. If you pre-order it through the publisher, Not Occult Media, it will be signed by me in my little scribbly handwriting. And I'm also still doing Wednesday Poems, which is where every Wednesday around noon PST, and usually a bit later because I'm a late person by nature, I read a poem from it on my Instagram live. So tune into that if you wish. Thank you for tuning in today. Please let me know what books meant a lot to you in the last few years, so I can get more reading recommendations. Thank you so much. Goodbye.